A lost world sleeps beneath the Amazon rainforest. For centuries, we believed this vast green wilderness was nearly empty, home only to scattered nomadic tribes. That story is wrong. A revolutionary laser technology is now peeling back the dense canopy to reveal the truth, exposing the foundations of vast, forgotten cities. This video will completely transform your understanding of ancient history in the Americas. We will explore how these hidden megalopolises were built, how a society of millions vanished, and what their ingenious, sustainable world can teach us today. How do you think our modern world measures up against a civilization that mastered the jungle for over 1,000 years? The conventional wisdom was stubborn and simple. This was a green desert, a place where only the smallest, most mobile groups could survive. For centuries, that belief colored every expedition and every interpretation. Early European explorers, venturing into what seemed an impenetrable wall of green, saw no grand pyramids, no sprawling plazas paved with stone. They encountered communities living in harmony with the forest, and from their limited viewpoint, they assumed this was all there had ever been. The very environment seemed to conspire against history. Torrential rains and incredibly acidic soils worked tirelessly to break down organic matter, consuming wood, thatch, and even bone with startling speed. To an archaeologist trained in the stone monuments of Egypt or the Maya world, the Amazon presented a profound and frustrating puzzle. The evidence wasn't in enduring temples, it was in the very land itself, subtle shapes hidden under roots and soil. Researchers would occasionally stumble upon massive geometric earthworks, perfect circles and squares carved into the ground, or find vast deposits of a unique, incredibly fertile soil known as Terra Preta, or black earth. These were clues, but without context they felt like fragments of a lost language. The central question hung in the humid air for generations: could a civilization of scale and complexity truly rise and fall here, leaving behind no stone citadels for us to find? The answer, as a new way of seeing would prove, was a resounding and transformative yes. This long-standing enigma set the perfect stage for a technological revolution, one that would finally allow us to read the landscape itself as the grandest artifact of all. The breakthrough came from the sky, a silent eye that could peer through a million leaves. This technology is called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Think of it like a form of sonar, but instead of using sound waves, it uses laser light. A specialized aircraft flies over the dense jungle, and from its belly, it sends down a constant, rapid firestorm of invisible laser pulses. Each pulse travels at the speed of light, hits something, a treetop, a branch, a vine, or finally, the ground itself, and bounces back to a sensor on the plane. By measuring the precise time it takes for each light pulse to return, a computer can calculate exact distances. Fire millions of these pulses every second, and you begin to build an astonishingly detailed three-dimensional map of everything below. The magic happens in the processing. Sophisticated software can then digitally strip away all the points that return from the vegetation, the canopy, the understory, leaving behind only the echoes that came from the bare earth. In a matter of hours, what was an impenetrable green blanket becomes a transparent window, revealing the true shape of the land beneath. This non-invasive approach is its greatest gift. Unlike traditional archaeology, which requires cutting through roots and digging into soil, LiDAR surveys from the air, leaving the fragile forest and any hidden structures completely undisturbed. It simply reveals what has been there all along, waiting to be seen. For the Amazon, this tool was nothing short of revolutionary. Archaeologists could suddenly survey hundreds of square miles with a precision measured in inches from the safety and speed of an airplane. It turned a task that would have taken generations of grueling, ground-based exploration into something achievable in a single season. The first time researchers saw the processed images, they were looking at a ghostly, digital landscape that no human eye had seen for centuries. And what they found there did not just rewrite a chapter of history, it demanded an entirely new book. The ground itself began to tell a story of astonishing scale and planning. The ghostly digital landscape was not empty. It was a sprawling, intricate blueprint. Early LiDAR surveys over famous Maya sites like Caracol had been revolutionary, revealing hidden pyramids and road networks swallowed by jungle. Yet those discoveries, as astounding as they were, still fit within an expected framework. They were cities built of stone. What the lasers began to uncover in the Amazon basin was something entirely different, a civilization that wrote its history not in quarried rock but in sculpted earth. The initial flights over the remote Acre state of Brazil and neighboring regions of Bolivia sent a shockwave through the archaeological community. Emerging from beneath the digital veil were not just a few isolated mounds, but vast geometric patterns of breathtaking precision. Perfect circles 100 feet across sat beside precise squares and elongated rectangles. Long, straight causeways ran for miles, connecting nodal points across the terrain. These forms were etched into the very soil, the product of countless hands moving unimaginable amounts of earth. They were the undeniable fingerprints of human engineering, but on a scale that defied every previous assumption. This was not the work of a few scattered villages. The sheer number and size of these earthworks suggested a coordinated, society-wide effort spanning generations. Researchers began to understand they were looking at the infrastructure of a lost world: ceremonial centers, defensive structures, water management systems, and roads, all built from the land itself. The discovery in Acre alone, with its complex of over 400 geometrically arranged earthworks, pointed to a population density and a level of societal organization that textbooks had long claimed was impossible for the Amazon. It was the first concrete evidence that the green wilderness had once been a carefully managed and deeply inhabited garden. The story of a pristine, untouched rainforest was beginning to dissolve, replaced by the far more compelling narrative of a landscape that had been home and shaped by millions of people for over 1,000 years. This raised an immediate and profound question. If the land was so carefully engineered, what kind of world were these people actually building? These were not isolated monuments, but the connected nodes of a vast living network. The true genius of this lost civilization was not in conquering the jungle, but in weaving their society directly into its fabric. This is where the concept of the garden city emerges, a revolutionary model of urban life that completely redefines what an ancient city could be. Forget the image of dense, stone-packed streets. Picture instead a sprawling, green metropolis. Residential areas were built on thousands of carefully constructed earthen mounds, lifting homes above the seasonal floods. These neighborhoods were not crammed together, but thoughtfully spaced and connected by long, straight-raised causeways that functioned as roads, even during the heaviest rains. At the heart of these settlements were large, open plazas, central gathering places for community life, ceremony, and commerce. But the most ingenious systems were those designed to work with water, not against it. The LiDAR maps reveal intricate networks of reservoirs and canals, evidence of a society that expertly managed this abundant resource, storing water for dry seasons and directing its flow to nourish their land. The landscape between these built structures was not wild, untamed forest. It was a carefully curated mosaic, a productive patchwork of domesticated fruit tree orchards, fertile agricultural fields enriched by that special Terra Preta soil, and tracts of forest managed for specific resources like timber, medicine, and game. This was a built environment that blended seamlessly with a cultivated one. It was a city that was also a garden, and a garden that sustained a city. This harmonious integration allowed these societies to support populations that scholars once thought impossible for the region, not through extraction, but through a deep, sustained partnership with their ecosystem. Their greatest architectural achievement was the sustainable landscape itself. This revelation forces us to ask a difficult, humbling question. How did a society that mastered its environment for over a millennium ultimately vanish, leaving only these earthen whispers behind? The silence of the Llanos de Mojos held one of the laser's most stunning revelations. In a vast, seasonally flooded savanna in Bolivia, LiDAR uncovered the physical heart of a society so advanced and so unknown that it had no place in our history books, the Casarabe culture. This civilization thrived in a challenging landscape from roughly 500 to 1400 AD, building a world that only now, from the air, we can begin to comprehend. The scans pinpointed two colossal urban centers, Kotoka and Landivar. These were not mere villages. Each was organized around a central, monumental platform mound, a raised citadel that likely supported temples and the homes of elites. Surrounding these cores were expansive plazas, residential districts built on smaller mounds, and a series of concentric, defensive moats and walls that spoke to both ceremony and security. The scale is almost difficult to grasp. The core area of Kotoka alone spans nearly 500 hectares, a carefully planned urban footprint that rivals many classic Maya cities in its spatial organization and ambition. But these great hubs were not isolated. They were the beating hearts of a far larger body. Radiating out from Kotoka and Landivar, the LiDAR maps show long, arrow-straight causeways, elevated roads built above the floodplain. These causeways stretch for many kilometers, connecting the major centers to a constellation of smaller subsidiary settlements, like spokes on a wheel. This is the signature of a truly integrated society, one capable of coordinating labor and resources across a wide territory, ensuring connection and control throughout the seasons. Perhaps their most brilliant innovation was hydrological. The Llanos de Mojos is a land of extremes, parched in the dry season and submerged during the rains. The Casarabe did not flee from this water, they engineered it. The LiDAR imagery reveals an intricate, landscape-scale system of canals, reservoirs, and raised fields. They diverted floodwaters into canals to nourish their crops on elevated planting beds, creating a reliable, year-round agricultural base in the middle of a savanna. This mastery of water management was the foundation of their power, allowing them to support a large, settled population and build their impressive monuments. The picture that emerges is of a powerful, centralized, and astonishingly adaptive society, a civilization that sculpted its entire world to not just survive, but to flourish for centuries. Their sudden disappearance from the historical record, then, presents us with a mystery of equal magnitude to their discovery. The Casarabe culture's world was not a solitary island of complexity. The lasers are now revealing that its story is just one brilliant thread in a much larger tapestry. From the dense forests of the Xingu River basin in central Brazil to the remote corners of the Colombian Amazon, similar patterns are emerging from the digital ground. This is the most profound implication of all. The phenomenon of large-scale, earth-sculpting societies was not an isolated anomaly, but a widespread reality across the entire Amazon basin. Different regions with their unique soils, rainfall patterns, and river systems gave rise to distinct cultural expressions. In the Upper Xingu, researchers have identified what they call galactic clusters, networks of villages connected by wide, straight roads and surrounding large, central plazas. These were not dense cities, but rather carefully spaced constellations of settlements, each with its own managed forest gardens and fish ponds, all linked into a social and economic web. Further west, in regions of Colombia, the earthworks take different forms, including extensive raised field systems for agriculture and complex water management features. Each group adapted the core principles of landscape engineering to their own specific environment, creating a stunning diversity of solutions to the challenges of life in the tropics. What this panoramic view reveals is a pre-Columbian Amazon that was fundamentally anthropogenic, meaning human-made. For over 1,000 years, generations of people actively shaped this environment, not with destructive force, but with a deep, strategic understanding. They enriched soils, planted and cultivated valuable tree species, diverted waterways, and built monumental earthworks that organized their social and spiritual world. The rainforest we often call pristine is in many ways a living legacy garden, still bearing the fingerprints of those ancient landscape architects. This realization completely reframes the history of the Americas. It suggests a continent pulsing with innovation and interconnected cultures long before European ships appeared on the horizon. The scale of this vanished world naturally leads us to its most haunting mystery. What powerful force could bring such a widespread and resilient way of life to an end? These geometric earthworks are perhaps the most visually arresting mystery the lasers have uncovered. Scattered across cleared areas of the western Amazon, they appear as colossal circles, squares, octagons, and interlocking rings, their trenches and embankments forming precise lines that can stretch for hundreds of feet. From the ground, walking through the dense undergrowth, you would see nothing but a slight, confusing rise or fall in the terrain. Their true form is only visible from the perspective of a bird, or now, a laser pulse. This very fact that they were designed to be seen as a whole from above is our first profound clue about their purpose. They were not built for daily, ground-level use in the way a home or a road would be. They were made to be perceived as complete ideas, as immense symbols etched into the earth itself. The effort involved is staggering. Creating just one of these geoglyphs required the coordinated labor of many people, moving thousands of tons of soil with simple tools and maintaining the exact geometric precision across a vast area. This tells us immediately that these were not the casual projects of a small village, but important communal undertakings directed by individuals with specialized knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and engineering. So what were they for? The most compelling theories weave together the practical, the social, and the spiritual. Some researchers point to their potential as ceremonial centers. The enclosures, often featuring a single, narrow entrance, could have defined sacred space, separating ritual activities from the everyday world. The act of construction itself may have been a powerful communal ritual, binding society together through shared labor for a higher purpose. Others see them as grand astronomical observatories. Certain alignments of their earthworks may correspond with solstice sunrises or the positions of important stars, turning the landscape into a giant calendar that marked the passage of seasons crucial for planting and harvest. Their form could also represent a cosmic map, a way of bringing the order of the heavens down to earth. There is also a defensive possibility. The deep ditches and high embankments, while not impenetrable fortifications in a traditional sense, could have served as symbolic boundaries, marking territory and controlling access to important resources or community spaces. They announced a presence and defined a social order. Most likely, their purpose was not one single thing, but a fusion of all these ideas. They were places where community was reinforced, where the cycles of the cosmos were observed and honored, and where a society declared its understanding of the world. They are a physical manifestation of a worldview, a belief system made visible in soil. To stand at the center of one of these great earthworks, even in our digital age, is to feel the echo of that intention, the desire to make a lasting mark and communicate with forces seen and unseen. This deep connection to place and cosmos raises a question that resonates through time. What happens when that connection is catastrophically broken? The sheer scale of the earthworks presents a staggering demographic puzzle. If these were not just ceremonial sites but the infrastructure of connected garden cities, the next logical question is one of immense scale. Just how many people called this engineered world home? For decades, the most common figure cited for the entire Amazon basin before European contact was perhaps 1 or 2 million souls living in small, scattered groups. The laser maps have rendered that number almost certainly a profound underestimate. Archaeologists, armed with this new cartography of lost settlements, are now engaged in a dramatic recalculation. Their methods are both meticulous and revealing. First, they analyze the residential areas, counting the distinct, raised earthen platforms revealed by LiDAR. By estimating the size of a typical household and the number of structures on each platform, they can begin to gauge a settlement's population. But the true key lies in the landscape itself. These were not hunter-gatherers living off wild resources alone. They were cultivators on an industrial scale. Researchers calculate the carrying capacity of the land, the amount of food it could reliably produce. They examine the vast expanses of Terra Preta, the enriched anthropogenic soil that can still be found today, which indicates intensive, sustained agriculture. They map the networks of orchards, fish ponds, and managed forest tracts that surrounded every settlement. When you add the productive potential of these cultivated mosaics to the evidence of dense, planned housing, the numbers begin to soar. Conservative revised estimates now suggest that at certain peaks, between 8 and 10 million people may have inhabited the Amazon basin. In its most densely settled regions, like the area of the Casarabe culture or parts of the Xingu, population densities could have rivaled those of many modern rural agricultural areas. This is not a minor correction, it is a complete paradigm shift. It means the Amazon was not a peripheral wilderness in the ancient Americas, but a major, thriving cradle of civilization, one of the great population centers of the pre-Columbian world. This realization makes the silence that followed not just a mystery of abandonment, but one of the most significant demographic tragedies in human history. The vibrancy of this lost world makes its eventual quiet even more poignant, pointing toward a convergence of forces that even the most ingenious society could not withstand. Feeding millions in a rainforest required a different kind of revolution, one that worked with the jungle's logic rather than against it. The key was not clearing vast fields, but creating a layered, living food system known as agroforestry. Picture this not as a farm, but as a carefully designed forest garden. In these spaces, tall canopy trees provided valuable nuts and fruits, while shorter trees and shrubs yielded medicines and spices. Below them, root crops like manioc grew in the dappled light, and vines climbed the trunks. This multi-story approach mimicked the natural rainforest structure, but every layer was a chosen, productive species. It created a resilient, year-round harvest that protected the soil from erosion and supported incredible biodiversity. This system turned the perceived limitation of diversity into their greatest agricultural strength. But to sustain such intensive cultivation over centuries, they needed one more miracle, a way to defeat the Amazon's notoriously poor, acidic soils, and they invented it. Across the basin, archaeologists find patches of startlingly dark, fertile earth standing in stark contrast to the surrounding thin yellow soil. This is Terra Preta, the Amazonian dark earth, and it is perhaps their most profound legacy. This is not a natural resource, it is a manufactured one. Through a deliberate, generations-long process, these ancient cultivators enriched the land by adding a mixture of charcoal from slow-burned plant matter, broken pottery, food scraps, and other organic waste. This was not simple composting, it was a sophisticated soil engineering technology. The charcoal, in particular, acted like a sponge, locking nutrients and moisture into the ground and creating a perfect home for beneficial microbes. The result is a soil so rich and self-regenerating that patches of Terra Preta are still sought after by farmers today, centuries after their creators vanished. This knowledge transforms our understanding of their relationship with the land. They were not passive inhabitants of a green world. They were active stewards and brilliant engineers who literally built the ground beneath their feet. They took a challenging environment and, through patience and deep understanding, turned it into a lasting garden. In an era grappling with soil depletion and sustainable food systems, this ancient technology whispers a powerful lesson about working in concert with nature's cycles. Their civilization's endurance was rooted in this very earth, which makes the fact of its collapse not just a historical event, but an ecological mystery of the highest order. Building a causeway for miles or a reservoir to serve thousands requires more than just willing hands. It demands a shared vision, a chain of command, and a society organized around a common purpose. The silent earthworks are, in essence, a testament to a sophisticated social and political fabric. These were not loose collections of autonomous villages, but complex societies, likely organized as powerful chiefdoms or small forest kingdoms. At their helm were individuals of considerable influence, leaders who could persuade or compel hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people to contribute their labor to projects that benefited the entire community. This mobilization was the engine behind every geometric enclosure, every miles-long raised road, and every intricate canal system. The nature of their leadership remains a subject of fascinating debate. Some archaeologists see the fingerprints of a theocratic elite where power flowed from a spiritual connection. The grand geoglyphs, visible only from above, could have been the domains of a priestly class who claimed the ability to read the heavens and commune with the forces of nature. By orchestrating ceremonies within these vast earthworks, they would have reinforced their sacred authority, turning the coordinated labor of construction into an act of collective faith. This spiritual leadership would have been crucial for maintaining social cohesion across a dispersed, garden city landscape. Other evidence points to more pragmatic forms of authority. The design and maintenance of the vast hydrological networks required specialized knowledge that went beyond ritual. We can envision a class of hydraulic engineers, individuals who understood gradients, water flow, and soil composition. Their expertise in keeping the fields watered and the settlements safe from flood would have granted them significant status and influence, making them key pillars of the political structure. This level of organization naturally fostered other hallmarks of complex society. The presence of distinct, high-status platform mounds in settlements like those of the Casarabe culture suggests social stratification, places where elites lived separately from the general populace. The sheer variety of artifacts found, from finely crafted pottery to ornaments made from imported materials, points to craft specialization. Potters, weavers, woodworkers, and stone tool makers could dedicate themselves to their trades because the agricultural system was productive enough to support them. Furthermore, the discovery of materials like certain types of stone or shells far from their sources reveals extensive trade networks. These exchange routes were not just for goods, but for ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, helping to unify regions across the vast basin. A shared tradition of building geometric earthworks, for instance, hints at a common cultural language that connected different groups across hundreds of miles. What emerges is a picture of dynamic and innovative political landscapes, uniquely adapted to the Amazonian environment. These were not carbon copies of the stone-based empires of the Andes or Mesoamerica. Their power was rooted in the control and management of the landscape itself, in the distribution of water, the stewardship of fertile Terra Preta gardens, and the maintenance of the connective causeways that bound their world together. Their leaders were likely those who guaranteed abundance and harmony with the forest, ruling not from stone palaces, but from the heart of a cultivated, thriving green metropolis. This intricate social world, so finely tuned to its environment, makes its eventual unraveling an even more compelling and urgent mystery to solve. What could possibly disrupt a system of such deep resilience and adaptation? The true genius of this civilization is written in the lines that connect the dots. Those laser maps reveal a landscape crisscrossed by long, straight causeways, elevated roads of packed earth that rise like gentle spines above the surrounding terrain. These were not wandering footpaths, they were engineered highways, some stretching for over 20 miles in a single, unerring line. Their purpose was profoundly practical, to keep people and goods moving even during the months of torrential rain when the forest floor became a shallow sea. Walking on one of these ancient roads, you would have been on a dry thoroughfare, looking out over flooded forests and fields, a testament to human ingenuity conquering a seasonal challenge. But these causeways were more than just dry pavement. They were the literal ties that bound this world together. They connected major ceremonial centers to outlying villages, residential mounds to agricultural fields, and one settlement to the next across what would have otherwise been difficult, swampy ground. Alongside them, the LiDAR imagery often shows carefully dug canals, channels that served a dual purpose. They managed water drainage, preventing settlements from flooding, but they also functioned as aquatic highways. In a land rich with rivers, canoes were the trucks and trains of their time. These canals extended the reach of natural waterways, allowing for the efficient transport of heavy or bulky goods, like harvested crops, pottery, or timber, across the entire region. This network of raised roads and liquid avenues formed the circulatory system of a living, breathing society. It meant that a community was never truly isolated. News could travel, ceremonies could attract participants from distant areas, and marriages could link families from different settlements. Most importantly, trade flourished. Specialized goods could flow, a potter's wares from one village, a particularly potent medicinal plant from another, or ornamental feathers from a distant forest tract. This constant exchange did more than move objects. It moved ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, weaving a shared identity across a vast and diverse territory. The scale of this infrastructure speaks to a level of regional planning and cooperation that is staggering. Building and maintaining a 20-mile raised causeway through dense rainforest is not a project a single village undertakes on a whim. It required agreement between multiple communities, a shared understanding of the route, and the coordinated labor of many people over a long period. This points to a social order capable of organizing beyond the local level, to leaders or councils who could envision and execute projects for the common good of an entire district. These were not just collections of villages that happened to be neighbors. They were integrated socio-political and economic units, interdependent pieces of a larger whole. They formed a connected world within the forest, a web of relationships that made the garden cities into something greater, a true civilization. This deep connectivity makes what happened next all the more difficult to comprehend, for a web this strong does not simply come apart on its own. Their achievements force us to rethink what a civilization truly looks like. When we compare these Amazonian societies to the more familiar ancient worlds of the Maya or the Inca, we are not comparing lesser to greater, but rather one brilliant solution to another. The Maya built towering limestone pyramids that scraped the sky, their cities dense with stone palaces and carved monuments meant to endure for eternity. The Inca engineered an empire along mountain spines, connecting distant provinces with an unparalleled network of stone roads and managing resources with a top-down imperial precision. These are the classic hallmarks we have long associated with advanced societies: permanent architecture in durable materials and large-scale political control. The Amazonian pathway was a different kind of masterpiece. They built for resilience within a specific, challenging ecology, not for permanence in stone. Their monuments were the landscape itself, shaped into geometric enclosures and raised platforms that served communal and spiritual needs. Their roads were earthen causeways that conquered the flood, and their greatest infrastructure was a living, breathing agroforestry system. Where the Maya and Inca often transformed their environments dramatically, clearing vast areas for cities and terraces, the Amazonians practiced a form of biomimicry, enhancing the forest's natural productivity. This distinction is crucial. It challenges the very criteria we have historically used to measure a civilization's importance. For too long, the narrative of human progress has been written in stone and metal, favoring societies that left behind obvious, durable ruins. The Amazonian story, written in soil and living trees, was simply harder to see and thus was overlooked. But is a pyramid inherently a greater achievement than a 1,000-year-old patch of fertile Terra Preta soil, a self-renewing resource that fed generations? Is a stone road more impressive than a canal system that sustainably managed an entire watershed? Their urban form reflects this philosophical difference. A Maya city like Tikal was a concentrated nucleus of power, a dense urban core exerting control over a hinterland. An Amazonian garden city was a distributed network, a green metropolis where the boundary between town and cultivated forest was beautifully blurred. This was not a lack of sophistication, it was a sophisticated adaptation to a different set of rules. It represents a parallel pathway to complexity, one that prioritized integration with the environment over domination of it. This expanded view does not diminish the Maya or the Inca, it enriches our understanding of the human story. It shows us that innovation is not a single ladder to be climbed, but a vast tree with many branches, each finding its own way toward creating order, meaning, and sustenance. Recognizing this alternate branch compels us to listen more carefully to the whispers of the earth, for they may hold lessons our stone-focused history has missed. The enduring silence of these earthworks is their final, most haunting message. By the late 15th century, as European ships first neared the shores of the Americas, the vibrant hum of many of these garden cities had already faded. The great causeways fell quiet, the geometric plazas grew still, and the careful hydrological networks began to silt over. What could bring down a society so deeply rooted and ingeniously adapted to its world? The answer likely lies not in a single cataclysm, but in a perfect storm of challenges that even the most resilient civilization could not weather indefinitely. One of the most compelling suspects is a shift in the very climate they had mastered. Emerging paleoclimatic data, drawn from lake sediments and soil cores, suggests the Amazon experienced periods of severe, prolonged drought during the centuries leading up to the Great Abandonment. For a civilization whose entire existence was predicated on exquisite water management, a decades-long dry spell would have been catastrophic. Their reservoirs and canals would have emptied, their raised field systems would have baked dry, and the delicate balance of their agroforestry gardens would have been thrown into chaos. Famine and social strain would have been inevitable outcomes, testing the bonds of community and the authority of leaders who could no longer guarantee the rains. Internal social upheaval may have followed, as competition for dwindling resources fractured the cooperative spirit that built the causeways in the first place. Furthermore, their vast trade networks, once a source of strength, could have become a conduit for a different kind of disaster. While the Americas were isolated from Europe and Asia, they were not isolated from each other. Pathogens could have traveled along those same routes that carried shells and ideas. Some researchers theorize that diseases unknown to a local population may have spread from other parts of the continent, weakening societies from within long before any European ever set foot in the jungle. This paints a picture of a world already under immense pressure, a magnificent tapestry beginning to fray at the edges. Then, a new and utterly alien force arrived on the continent, turning a period of decline into an unthinkable collapse. The arrival of Europeans did not introduce conflict to a pristine paradise. It introduced biological weapons to a potentially vulnerable world. Old world diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, against which indigenous populations had zero immunity, acted like wildfire in dry grass. These illnesses swept through communities with a speed and lethality that is difficult to comprehend, often killing a majority of a population within a single generation. The social devastation would have been absolute. The specialized knowledge of hydraulic engineering, the oral traditions guiding the creation of Terra Preta, the rituals that maintained social cohesion, all died with the elders and specialists who held them. The remaining survivors, shattered by loss and unable to maintain the complex, labor-intensive infrastructure, would have had little choice but to abandon their cities and disperse into smaller, more mobile groups. The forest, which they had so carefully managed for a millennium, did not need to conquer their world. It simply waited and then steadily, patiently, grew back over the empty mounds and silent roads. This was not a return to a wild state, but a profound and tragic rewilding of a human-made landscape. The Great Abandonment, therefore, stands as a layered tragedy, a combination of environmental shifts and a biological catastrophe that erased not just people, but an entire way of seeing and shaping the world. The laser map is a breathtaking guide, but it is not the final word. LiDAR reveals the ghostly outlines of a lost world, the footprints of ancient engineering, yet it cannot whisper the stories held within those shapes. It shows us the what and the where with stunning clarity, but the vital questions of when, why, and who remain locked in the soil itself. This is the critical moment where digital discovery meets physical proof, a process archaeologists call ground truthing. After the awe of seeing a perfect geometric form emerge on a computer screen, teams must then undertake the arduous journey into the very heart of the rainforest, navigating to the precise coordinates the lasers provided. Their goal is to walk across the same ground that the sensors mapped from the air, to feel the rise of an ancient embankment underfoot, and to carefully uncover the secrets it has guarded for centuries. Without this essential step, the LiDAR images are like finding a beautifully illustrated but untitled book. We can see the structure, but we cannot read the story. Ground truthing is how we begin to translate the landscape. Through meticulous excavation, archaeologists can recover the artifacts that bring these sites to life. Fragments of pottery that hint at daily meals and trade, stone tools that show the methods of construction, and organic materials like charcoal or seeds that are the key to unlocking time itself. Radiocarbon dating of these organic finds allows scientists to pin a calendar date to the earthworks, revealing whether two distant sites were contemporaries or built centuries apart. This physical evidence helps determine a structure's function. Was this raised platform a residential mound, a ceremonial stage, or a defensive lookout? The relationship between the high-tech survey and the traditional dig is now beautifully symbiotic. Before LiDAR, searching for sites in the Amazon was a monumental gamble, like looking for a single, specific tree in a forest of millions. Researchers could spend entire careers and vast resources covering tiny fractions of land with little guarantee of a major find. Now, the laser scans act as a brilliant scout, surveying hundreds of square miles from the air and producing a detailed treasure map that highlights the most promising targets. It tells field teams exactly where to focus their precious time and effort, transforming a needle in a haystack search into a targeted mission of discovery. This partnership makes exploration in the vast Amazon not only possible but profoundly efficient, ensuring that every shovel of earth turned is guided by intelligence from above. The true narrative of this lost civilization is written in layers, a fusion of the panoramic view from the sky and the intimate, granular details recovered from the ground. One shows us the scale of their ambition, the other reveals the texture of their daily lives. The very act of uncovering this past is tangled with the urgent pressures of the present. As lasers map these lost cities, chainsaws are clearing the same forests at an alarming rate. This collision of discovery and destruction creates a profound ethical dilemma, one where the quest to understand ancient history must be carefully balanced with the rights and realities of the living world. The findings themselves are a potent conservation argument, proving the Amazon is not a virgin wilderness but a historical homeland, a cultural landscape shaped by human hands over millennia. This long-term relationship challenges the narrative that the forest is merely an untapped resource, reframing it as a legacy to be stewarded. Yet, revealing the precise locations of these sensitive sites carries immense risk. In regions plagued by illegal logging, mining, and land grabbing, a published map can become a treasure hunt for looters seeking valuable artifacts, leading to the irreversible destruction of archaeological context and the theft of cultural heritage. Furthermore, these ancient landscapes often lie within or near the territories of contemporary indigenous communities, whose sovereignty, knowledge, and connection to the land are paramount. Archaeology, therefore, cannot operate in an academic vacuum. It must move forward with a new set of protocols, placing partnership and consent at its core. Leading researchers now work directly with indigenous nations, not as subjects of study but as co-guardians of history. These collaborations ensure that exploration proceeds only with community permission, that traditional knowledge guides interpretation, and that any discoveries directly benefit the people whose ancestors built these places. In this model, archaeology transforms from a science of extraction into a tool for cultural preservation and land defense. By documenting the deep historical roots of indigenous occupation, this research can provide powerful legal evidence in the fight for land rights, helping to protect territories from encroachment. The story written in the soil thus becomes a shield for the forest itself, linking the preservation of the past directly to the survival of its living descendants. This respectful approach seeks a difficult harmony, ensuring that the quest to illuminate a lost world does not inadvertently harm the vibrant, enduring world that remains. For the communities living within this forest today, the laser maps are not revealing a secret. They are simply confirming a truth passed down through generations. The geometric earthworks and the overgrown mounds have names in stories told long before any aircraft flew overhead. Oral traditions among many Amazonian peoples speak of a time of great ancestors, of powerful beings who shaped the land, built immense structures, and established the ways of living that are still practiced. Where outside researchers see a stunning new discovery, many indigenous peoples see a familiar chapter of their own family history finally being acknowledged by the wider world. This distinction is profound. It shifts the entire narrative from one of loss and rediscovery to one of continuity and reconnection. The past these technologies are uncovering is not a separate, vanished world. It is the deep foundation of a living, present-day culture. This realization transforms the role of archaeology itself. The most insightful interpretations of these laser images will not come from satellites and computers alone, but from the generations of knowledge held by the peoples whose home this has always been. Their understanding of the plants, the soils, the river cycles, and the stories embedded in the landscape provides a context that no remote sensor can ever detect. For instance, the modern practice of creating fertile soils, a technique observed in many communities, is now understood by scientists as a direct descendant of the ancient Terra Preta technology. The sophisticated agroforestry systems that sustain villages today, the intricate gardens blending hundreds of useful species, are not a recent innovation but a maintained tradition, a living library of botanical knowledge curated over more than 1,000 years. When an elder points to a specific cluster of trees and explains its historical significance as a former gathering place or a boundary marker, they are providing a key that can unlock the purpose of an earthwork visible only from the air. This makes collaboration not just an ethical imperative, but a scientific necessity. Forward-thinking research projects are now built on genuine partnership, where Indigenous guides and knowledge holders work alongside archaeologists, not as laborers but as co-investigators. Together, they walk the paths revealed by LiDAR, and the stories shared turn silent shapes on a map into places of ceremony, memory, and social life. This collaborative model reframes the ultimate goal. It is no longer about extracting data about a lost people, but about reconnecting threads of history for the benefit of the descendants who carry that legacy. It acknowledges that the true experts on the Amazon's past, and by extension its most sustainable future, are the peoples who have nurtured this relationship with the land across countless generations. Their enduring presence is the most powerful testament to the resilience of the ideas that built the garden cities. This living bridge between deep time and the present moment offers something far more valuable than a solved mystery. It offers a compass for the future, pointing toward ways of living that are not imposed upon the world, but woven directly into its fabric. This search for lost cities is quietly powering a revolution in how we see the world. The drive to peer beneath the Amazon's canopy did not just happen with existing tools, it demanded better ones. The unique challenges of archaeology, from filtering out dense vegetation to covering vast, remote areas, have acted as a powerful catalyst for innovation in LiDAR technology itself. To map these subtle earthen shapes, engineers had to design sensors that were not only incredibly precise but also lighter, more energy efficient, and capable of operating from smaller, more agile platforms. The result is a new generation of laser scanning equipment that is more accessible and versatile than ever before. Equally important is the software side. The monumental task of processing billions of laser points, of teaching a computer to distinguish a tree root from a pottery shard signature, or a natural hill from a constructed platform, has pushed the development of smarter, faster data processing algorithms. These are the unsung heroes of the discovery, the complex code that transforms a cloud of raw data into a clear, navigable map of the past. This technological evolution, spurred by historical curiosity, does not stay locked in the realm of archaeology. It creates a powerful ripple effect. The very same lightweight, high-resolution LiDAR systems, now often mounted on drones, are being used to conduct detailed surveys of modern forests, allowing scientists to measure carbon storage in tree canopies with unprecedented accuracy, a vital tool in the fight against climate change. In the wake of natural disasters, these systems can rapidly scan collapsed buildings or flooded landscapes, creating three-dimensional maps that help first responders locate hazards and plan rescues without putting more people in danger. Urban planners use the technology to model cities in intricate detail, planning for green spaces and infrastructure needs. Even farmers are beginning to use drone-based LiDAR to analyze the topography and health of their fields. This is the profound, often overlooked consequence of exploring our past. The quest to understand ancient societies forces us to develop new ways of seeing, and those new eyes then turn to the pressing challenges of our own time. Investing in the science of history is not a retreat into the past, it is an investment in the tools we need to build a better future. The story of the Amazon's hidden cities, therefore, is more than a historical narrative. It is a testament to how human curiosity, when paired with ingenuity, can illuminate both where we came from and the path ahead. The implications of this lost world ripple far beyond the borders of the rainforest. This new evidence demands we close an old textbook and open a completely different one, for the history of the Americas has been fundamentally misunderstood. For generations, the dominant narrative presented a hemisphere that was, with a few notable exceptions, sparsely populated by peoples whose impact on the land was minimal. The Amazon, in particular, was enshrined as the ultimate example of this idea, a vast, untouched wilderness that stood apart from human history. We now know this was never true. The so-called pristine myth, the belief that the Americas were a blank slate of nature awaiting European influence, has been definitively shattered by laser light. The continents were not empty. They were home to a tapestry of societies whose scale and sophistication we are only beginning to grasp. The garden cities of the Amazon must now take their rightful place alongside the stone pyramids of the Maya, the island capital of the Aztec, and the mountain empire of the Inca as one of the great centers of pre-Columbian civilization. This is not about ranking one achievement against another, but about expanding our view to include a whole new branch of human ingenuity. It challenges a long-held bias in how we measure a civilization's worth, a bias that favored permanent stone monuments over sustainable landscape engineering. The Amazonians did not build for eternity in rock. They built for resilience in living systems, and their success, measured in centuries of abundance, was just as valid. This revised map of the ancient Americas reveals a far more interconnected and dynamic world. Trade routes likely linked the forests to the mountains and the coasts, moving not only goods but ideas. The very concept of isolated cultural development begins to fade, replaced by a picture of a hemisphere humming with exchange and innovation. This perspective fundamentally reshapes our understanding of human capacity for adaptation. It shows us that complex societies can flourish in environments we once deemed too challenging, not by conquering nature, but by learning its deepest logic and partnering with it. This realization carries a profound and sobering weight, for it casts the arrival of Europeans in a new and even more tragic light. The catastrophe that followed was not the inevitable clash between the advanced and the primitive. It was the collision of two different but equally valid pathways to civilization, one of which carried biological weapons that the other had no defense against. The collapse of the Amazonian world and the dramatic depopulation of the Americas stands as one of the most consequential demographic and cultural disasters in human history. Recognizing the true scale of what was lost is not just an academic exercise. It is an essential step in honoring the legacy of those millions and understanding the deep roots of the landscapes we see today. The forest is not a wilderness, it is a garden with a memory, and its story is now irrevocably part of our own. The map we have is still a sketch, its edges fading into vast, uncharted green. For all the revelations, the LiDAR surveys have covered only a fraction of the Amazon basin. The majority of this immense rainforest, particularly the remote headwaters of the Orinoco River and the ancient, mineral-rich highlands of the Guiana Shield, remains a digital mystery. What other civilizations, what other unique adaptations to mountain slopes or seasonally flooded plains are still waiting silently beneath the canopy? The potential is staggering. Each of these unexplored regions represents a different ecological theater, and within them, we may find entirely new scripts of human innovation. The next great discovery might not be a network of geometric earthworks, but perhaps a system of terraced hillsides for highland agriculture, or a complex of structures built into cliff faces. The unknown chapters of this story are likely as diverse as the rainforest itself. This is not the end of exploration, but a thrilling new beginning, propelled by a wave of emerging technologies that will let us see even more clearly. The next frontier is already taking shape above us, with satellite-based LiDAR systems in development. Imagine a constellation of eyes in orbit, capable of scanning entire continents with a consistency and scale that aircraft simply cannot match. This global perspective could reveal connections between known sites across impossible distances. showing us the true extent of ancient trade and cultural exchange networks that spanned South America. On the ground, the data deluge from these massive scans will be met with artificial intelligence. Advanced algorithms, trained to recognize the subtle signatures of human activity, will sift through billions of data points, flagging potential earthworks, roadways, or agricultural patterns that a human eye might miss in the sheer volume of information. This is not about replacing archaeologists, but about giving them a powerful new assistant to guide their intuition. Furthermore, non-invasive geophysical techniques like ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity surveys will allow researchers to probe beneath the surface of these sites without ever lifting a shovel, revealing the layout of buried structures, hearths, or storage pits. The convergence of these tools, from orbital lasers to intelligent software, promises a future where discovery accelerates exponentially. Every new survey flight, every satellite pass, carries the potential to unveil another lost city, another garden metropolis that rewrites our understanding. This is a promise of decades, perhaps centuries, of groundbreaking research. Each find will be a puzzle piece, refining the grand picture of the ancient Amazon from a blurry impression into a high-definition portrait of human achievement. The journey into this green past is just getting started, and the greatest discoveries may still be ahead, hidden in the last great wildernesses of our world. The legends were never just stories. For hundreds of years, explorers and dreamers spoke of golden cities hidden deep within the green heart of the continent, places with names like El Dorado and the City of Z. These tales fueled expeditions that ended in hardship and disappointment, leading most historians to dismiss them as pure fantasy, the product of wishful thinking and cultural misunderstanding. Yet today, as lasers map the foundations of vast, forgotten urban networks, we are forced to reconsider: could these myths hold a kernel of historical truth, a distorted memory of the real garden cities that once thrived here? The connection is compelling. Consider the legend of El Dorado itself, the Gilded One. The core of that story is not really about a city of gold, but about a ritual where a leader, covered in powdered gold, would dive into a sacred lake as an offering. This points not to limitless mineral wealth, but to a society of immense cultural sophistication and spiritual depth. A society capable of organizing elaborate ceremonies and producing fine crafts. That description fits the archaeological reality of the Casarabe culture and its contemporaries perfectly. Societies with monumental platform mounds that likely served as ceremonial stages and evidence of intricate artwork and trade in valuable materials. The legends may have garbled the details over centuries, swapping Terra Preta for gold and ceremonial centers for literal palaces of treasure, but the essence, the idea of a powerful, advanced civilization in the jungle, remains strikingly intact. These oral traditions likely began as the memories of the descendants of those who built the garden cities. When societies fractured and populations dispersed after the Great Collapse, the stories of the Old World, of the great mounds and the long straight roads, did not vanish. They were carried by the survivors, told and retold around fires for generation after generation. With each telling, the specifics blurred, the scale might have grown, and the materials transformed into something more symbolic or wondrous to later listeners. A causeway that shone when wet might become a street of silver. A leader's ornate feather headdress might become a crown of gold. The factual history slowly morphed into myth, but the central wonder, the awe for what was lost, endured. This process shows us that myth is not the opposite of history, but often its long echo. Our modern tools are now catching up to that echo, providing the physical evidence that turns whispered legend into documented fact. It proves a profound truth about human storytelling, that our oldest tales are rarely pure invention, but are often anchored in a real place, a real event, or a real people, waiting for the right key to unlock their meaning. This fusion of laser science and ancient lore does more than solve a mystery. it validates a fundamental human impulse to remember and to wonder what magnificent worlds might lie just beyond the edge of our knowing. Their legacy is not locked in the past, it is written into the very soil beneath our feet. The ancient Amazonians did more than build cities. They engineered an entire ecosystem for long-term survival, and in doing so, they inadvertently crafted powerful solutions to problems that define our own era. Their two greatest innovations, the creation of Terra Preta and the mastery of agroforestry, were not just clever farming tricks, they were sophisticated climate technologies developed over centuries of observation and adaptation. Terra Preta, that dark, fertile earth, is remarkably rich in a specific form of carbon known as biochar. This charcoal, created through a controlled burning process called pyrolysis, is incredibly stable. Once mixed into the soil, it resists decay for hundreds, even thousands of years, acting as a permanent carbon sink. While modern agriculture often depletes soil carbon, releasing it into the atmosphere, the Amazonian practice actively pulled carbon from the air and locked it safely underground. Their food forests achieved a similar resilience through diversity. Instead of vast fields of a single crop, they cultivated layered gardens with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of interdependent species. This biodiversity created a natural defense system. If a pest or a disease attacked one plant, the entire system did not collapse. It could withstand shocks from drought to deluge far better than any monoculture ever could. This ancient model presents a profound question for our time. What if some of the most promising paths forward are actually paths back to a deeper understanding of how to work with natural systems rather than against them? Modern regenerative agriculture is already exploring this very idea. Scientists and farmers are now studying Terra Preta to learn how to replicate its carbon-sequestering magic, creating what some call Terra Preta Nova, or New Black Earth, to restore degraded soils and fight climate change. The principles of agroforestry, of integrating trees with crops and livestock, are being revived to rebuild soil health, increase water retention, and provide food security. In large-scale reforestation projects, the lesson is clear: planting a diverse mix of native species, much like the ancient garden cities did, creates a forest that is healthier, more resilient, and better for biodiversity than a plantation of identical trees. The hidden cities offer more than a historical revelation. They provide a living case study in sustainability. They prove that it is possible for human societies to not just live within their ecological means, but to actively enhance the fertility and carbon storage capacity of their environment over the long term. Their blueprint was not one of scarcity, but of abundance engineered through intelligence and patience. In an age searching for ways to capture carbon and feed a growing population without destroying the planet, these ancient whispers from the Amazon are becoming remarkably clear. They suggest that the most advanced technology we need might not be a new invention, but the rediscovery of an old and deeply wise relationship with the land. The story of these lost cities is no longer confined to research papers. The very same LiDAR data that guides archaeologists is now being transformed into breathtaking digital landscapes, allowing anyone with an internet connection to step into the past. Imagine strapping on a virtual reality headset and finding yourself standing on a vast, sun-drenched earthen plaza in the heart of a Casarabe city, looking up at the monumental platform mound that once anchored this community. You can turn and gaze down a perfectly straight causeway as it vanishes into the distant tree line, a perspective once reserved only for birds or guards. These are not artistic guesses, they are precise digital reconstructions built directly upon the three-dimensional maps created by millions of laser pulses. Every mound, every road, every geometric enclosure is placed exactly where the scans revealed it to be. Museums around the world are incorporating these visualizations into immersive exhibits, while online platforms host interactive tours that let you explore these sites from your own home. This is the new frontier of public archaeology, and its impact is profound. By translating complex data into an intuitive, sensory experience, it breaks down the barriers between expert and enthusiast. A child can grasp the scale of a geoglyph by virtually walking its perimeter in a way a paragraph in a textbook could never convey. A student on another continent can appreciate the engineering of a canal system by seeing how it integrates with the terrain. This digital access democratizes discovery, making one of history's greatest recent revelations a shared, global experience. It transforms abstract concepts of population density and societal organization into something visceral and understandable. More importantly, it fosters a powerful, emotional connection to this cultural heritage. Seeing a city come to life on screen, even a digital one, sparks a sense of wonder and stewardship. It moves the narrative from something that happened to a distant, anonymous people to a story about human ingenuity that belongs to all of us. This collective understanding is vital for protecting these fragile sites, both from physical threats and from the slow erosion of forgetting, requires a public that cares. When we can virtually walk the roads our ancestors built, their legacy ceases to be a forgotten secret and becomes a living part of our shared human story, a story now illuminated for everyone to see. The dense forest that guarded these secrets for centuries is now retreating. This protective green cloak, which slowly and gently reclaimed the ancient cities, is being stripped away at an alarming pace by modern forces. The very features that preserved the subtle earthworks, the intricate root systems and thick leaf litter, are vanishing. In their place come cleared fields for large-scale agriculture, networks of roads for new settlements, and excavations for mining and logging. These activities do not just change the view from above, they physically scrape away the past. An earthen causeway that survived 1,000 years of rain can be leveled by a single bulldozer in an afternoon. A geometric enclosure, invisible at ground level, can be plowed under for soybean crops before anyone even knows it was there. The soil of these structures is not like stone, it is a delicate, compacted fabric of history. Once the stabilizing forest roots are removed, wind and water can begin eroding these forms in just a few seasons, blurring their precise lines into meaningless slopes. The threat is urgent and non-negotiable, for an archaeological site destroyed is a chapter of the human story erased forever, a unique dataset that can never be recovered. This reality forces a difficult pivot in the narrative, from celebration of discovery to the imperative of protection. The race is no longer just to find these places, but to secure them for future generations before the modern world unknowingly paves over them. How do we protect a heritage that is so vast, so hidden, and so fragile? The first line of defense lies in legal recognition. Many countries within the Amazon basin have strong national laws designed to protect cultural heritage. The process begins with formally cataloging a newly discovered site, documenting its coordinates, its features, and its significance. This official registration grants the site a legal status, making its unauthorized disturbance or destruction a punishable offense. It is a crucial shield, but on its own, it is often not enough. A law on paper is difficult to enforce across millions of acres of remote rainforest. This is why the creation of dedicated protected zones is so vital. Archaeologists and conservationists are now working to establish archaeological parks or reserves that encompass not just a single mound, but entire ancient landscapes, the garden cities in their full context. These zones integrate cultural preservation with environmental conservation, recognizing that the two are inseparable. Protecting the forest directly protects the archaeology beneath it. Such designations can restrict harmful activities and channel development away from sensitive areas, but they require sustained funding, monitoring, and local support to be effective. Given the transnational nature of both the Amazon ecosystem and this ancient civilization, no single country can shoulder this responsibility alone. International cooperation becomes essential. Sharing LiDAR data and mapping technologies can help neighboring nations identify vulnerable sites along their borders. Global heritage organizations can provide expertise, funding, and a platform to raise awareness, highlighting these places as treasures of worldwide importance. The goal is to build a multi-layered safety net, one woven from local stewardship, national law, and global partnership. Ultimately, preserving this fragile heritage is not an obstacle to progress, but a necessary dimension of it. It ensures that the profound lessons these cities hold about sustainable living, societal resilience, and human ingenuity are not lost just as we are finally learning to read them. The work of conservation must now advance with the same urgency and innovation as the work of discovery. For every site saved is another voice recovered from the silence of the centuries. The true portrait of this lost world is a mosaic pieced together by many different hands. No single lens can capture its full complexity. To understand a civilization that built with earth and forest, you need more than an archaeologist's trowel. You need a botanist who can look at a stand of trees and see the ghost of an ancient orchard. You need a hydrologist who can read the subtle slopes of the land and reconstruct a centuries-old irrigation network. You need a soil scientist who can analyze a handful of dark earth and decode the recipe for Terra Preta. And you need an anthropologist who can interpret the social blueprint written in the spacing of mounds and the alignment of roads. This is the power of interdisciplinary synthesis, where separate fields of knowledge converge to answer a single, profound question. When a remote sensing specialist delivers a laser map, that is not the end of the investigation. It is the starting point for a dozen new conversations. An ecologist might overlay that map with data on soil nutrients and tree species, revealing how certain valuable fruit trees, like Brazil nut or cacao, still cluster in precise patterns along ancient causeways, living legacies of deliberate cultivation. A hydrologist can take the digital elevation model and run simulations, showing how rainwater would have flowed through the ancient canals and reservoirs, proving the system's elegant efficiency. Meanwhile, an anthropologist studies the settlement patterns, the size and arrangement of residential platforms around central plazas, to infer social hierarchy, family structure, and community organization. Each discipline brings a unique piece of the puzzle. The soil scientist confirms the human origin of the fertile grounds that fed the cities. The climate historian provides context with data on ancient droughts that may have strained the system. The linguist and ethnographer work with contemporary indigenous knowledge holders, whose oral traditions and land management practices offer the closest key to interpreting the past. Alone, each field sees a fragment. Together, they assemble a living, breathing world. This collaborative model reveals that the greatest historical mysteries are not solved by lone experts in isolated specialties, but by teams that bridge the sciences and the humanities. It is a holistic approach that acknowledges a simple truth: human societies do not exist in compartments. Their technology is intertwined with their spirituality, their agriculture with their social rules, their architecture with their environment. To see them fully, we must look with every tool and perspective we have. The story of the Amazon's garden cities, therefore, stands as a triumphant case study in this way of seeing. It is a story reconstructed not from a single scroll or monument, but from the synthesis of laser light and leaf litter, of soil chemistry and ancestral memory. It proves that our past is richest when we dare to connect the dots across the entire map of human understanding. The laser's eye has peeled back the Amazonian canopy to reveal a lost world of garden cities, earthwork constellations, and interconnected societies that flourished for centuries. This is more than an archaeological breakthrough. It is a profound recalibration of human history itself. For too long, our story of human achievement was built upon what we could easily see, the stone monuments that endured. We measured progress in pyramids and palaces, overlooking the quieter genius of societies that built with soil and seed. The hidden megalopolises of the Amazon force us to expand that definition. They prove that civilization is not a single path, but a forest of possibilities. A society's greatness can be measured not only by the height of its towers, but by the depth of its roots, by its ability to weave a thriving, sustainable life directly into the fabric of a challenging world. These discoveries teach us about resilience forged over a millennium, about innovation that works in concert with nature rather than against it. The ancient Amazonians did not see the rainforest as an obstacle to be cleared, but as a partner to be understood. Their legacy, encoded in Terra, Preta and living food forests, is a masterclass in long-term thinking. It shows us that abundance is not about extraction, but about cultivation, about enriching the systems that sustain us. This understanding arrives at a critical moment for our own world. As we face global challenges of climate instability and resource management, these ancient whispers offer a powerful, alternative blueprint. They remind us that the most advanced solutions may come from listening to the past, from recognizing patterns of harmony that allowed millions to flourish. The story of the Amazon is a story of rediscovery, but also of profound humility. It confirms that history is never a closed book. With new eyes and new tools, we are constantly rewriting the narrative, finding lost chapters that change everything we thought we knew. What other forgotten worlds lie hidden, waiting for their story to be told? If you found this journey into a reimagined past fascinating, please subscribe for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear your thoughts on these amazing discoveries in the comments below. What lesson from these garden cities resonates most with you?